You've been living someone else's story, wearing names they gave you, chasing dreams they sold you. But when the noise fades, when the roles fall quiet, a question haunts you. Who am I? Really? You weren't born empty. You were born whole, radiant, remembering, but the world made you forget. Every rule, every label, every voice pulling you away from your truth, not to help you, to keep you asleep. Because a soul that remembers can't be controlled. There is a technique, older than words, forbidden not because it harms, but because it frees. It's not a method, it's a vibration. Not something you learn, something you return to. If you've ever felt like something sacred lives beneath your skin, like there's a light inside you that's been covered, not lost, this is the moment you stop forgetting. Your soul remembers, and it's time you do too. For thousands of years, they've hidden this truth, not with lies, but with distractions. They filled your life with noise, tasks, labels, goals, not to help you grow, but to make sure you never stop to ask, what if none of this is me? Because somewhere in your silence you'd remember, and that is what they fear. There's an ancient technique, older than religion, deeper than thought. Not taught, remembered, not believed, felt. It was whispered across temples in Egypt, behind the stone masks of Orphic Greece, echoed in the mantras of Indian sages. A single practice, hidden beneath 1,000 forms, because its essence couldn't be owned. It didn't teach you how to be divine. It showed you that you already are, not someday, not after enlightenment, now, always. The soul doesn't need to evolve. It needs to be uncovered. And this technique, the forbidden one, doesn't give you anything new. It takes away everything false, until only vibration remains. Pure, original, you. But why was it hidden? Because awakening is disobedient. A remembered soul cannot be ruled. In the next few minutes, we will walk the lost path. We will uncover the roots, the symbols, the ritual that frees not the body, but the memory behind your eyes. And if you let it, this won't be a lesson. It will be your return. They didn't burn the ancient libraries because they feared ignorance. They feared remembrance. You see, forgetting is profitable. When you forget who you are, you buy what they sell. You follow what they say. You believe that your worth comes from titles, followers, outcomes. But a soul that remembers stops playing that game. That's why this technique, this simple, silent act of returning, was labeled dangerous. Not because it causes chaos, but because it ends control. Across time, powerful systems masked this practice in rituals, cut it into dogma, or mocked it as superstition. They renamed it, distorted it, until only shadows remained. They told you that divinity lives outside, in temples, in books, in someone else's hands. They told you that you had to earn your way back home. But home was never far. It was never lost, just covered. Look at the ruins of ancient wisdom. In Egypt, initiates were buried alive in darkness, not to die, but to awaken. In Greece, the Orphics chanted through breath and rhythm, unlocking glimpses beyond the veil. In India, the sages spoke of smarana, not learning, but the sacred act of remembering. These weren't separate ideas. They were different languages saying the same truth. You are not here to find yourself. You are here to remember, but memory is rebellion. Because once you remember, you stop needing their approval, their fear, their permission. You start listening inward, and nothing outside owns you again. You've tried to think your way to the truth, read books, watch teachers, chased meaning, but no thought has ever fully satisfied you, has it? That's because the soul doesn't speak in thoughts. It speaks in vibration. And memory, the kind that shakes your bones, doesn't come from thinking. It comes from feeling what you've always known. Imagine this. Your soul is a perfect melody. But over time, noise, beliefs, trauma, conditioning drowned it out. So you stopped hearing it. You thought it was gone. But it wasn't. It was just buried. And this technique, this forbidden act of remembering, it doesn't teach you a new song. It just removes the static until the melody returns, not all at once, not through force, but gradually, like light returning to a forgotten room. This is why so many people feel empty even after knowing the truth, because knowing isn't enough. You have to resonate. Vibration is the language of the soul. It's how you recognize what's real, not because someone proves it to you, but because it hums the same note you carry deep inside. So when something resonates, don't doubt it. That's not coincidence. That's remembrance. And you don't have to understand it. You just have to allow it. Because the moment you stop thinking and start feeling deeply, the soul begins to whisper. And in that whisper is a truth so simple, so obvious. You'll wonder how you ever forgot. This is the hardest part, not because it's complex, but because it's personal. To remember who you are, you first have to admit who you're not. And that means facing the masks you've worn for so long. You started calling them your face. Start here. Listen to the voices in your head, not to believe them, but to question them. Work harder, or you'll fall behind. You're not enough. Be who they expect. Whose voice is that really? Your soul never spoke like that. You didn't come here afraid. You learned fear. You didn't come here ashamed. You were trained to shrink. Unmasking the false self isn't about shame. It's about clarity. Ask yourself, what do I want? What do I fear? And where did those answers come from? Most of them were never yours. They were inherited, programmed, imposed. The forbidden technique doesn't attack these programs. It exposes them, because the moment you see them clearly, they begin to fall apart on their own. Truth doesn't fight. It reveals. So sit in silence, not to fix yourself, but to see what doesn't belong. Because what wasn't built by your soul cannot survive its gaze, and once the noise begins to fade, a space opens up. A quiet, where something real is waiting to step forward. When the noise begins to fade, something stirs, not outside, not in your mind, but deeper. There's a sense within you, older than thought, quieter than emotion, a direct knowing that doesn't explain. It simply is. This is your inner sense, not logic, not instinct, but perception without filters, awareness without stories, and it's always been there, just ignored. You've glimpsed it in still moments, watching the sun rise, hearing a child laugh, touching something sacred without knowing why. In those moments, you weren't thinking. You were present. That's the key. This sense awakens not through effort, but through tuning. The forbidden technique guides you back through presence, mindful breath, ritual stillness, sacred imagery. Symbols matter here, not as decoration, but as vibration. Visualize a flame at your center, a lotus blooming in your chest, a mirror behind your eyes. These aren't fantasies, they're ancient languages your soul remembers, because when you imagine with full devotion, your soul treats it as real. And what you feel with truth awakens memory. This is why silence is not emptiness. It's a portal. This is why breath is not just survival. It's a bridge. The more you live from this inner sense, the more the outer world begins to align. You stop reacting. You start recognizing. And in that subtle shift, you realize you were never trying to awaken your soul. Your soul was waiting for you to wake up. What if you had a name no one ever told you? A name not spoken, but felt. A vibration unique to your soul, unchanging, eternal, waiting to be heard. Every ancient tradition whispered about it. The true name. Not what the world calls you, but what the universe recognizes you by. This name isn't made of letters, it's made of frequency. It doesn't belong on a birth certificate. It belongs in resonance. And here's the secret. You don't find it, you become it. This is the final phase of the forbidden technique, the most sacred, the most elusive, Because to resonate with your true name, you must first shed everything that echoes someone else. No more masks, no more borrowed beliefs, no more trying to be enough. Instead, you enter a state, a stillness, where something ancient begins to pulse through you, not like information, but like recognition. It's sudden, it's undeniable, it doesn't shout, it simply is. You may not be able to explain it, but you'll know. This is me, not the me I built, but the me I've always been. This doesn't happen on demand. It happens when you're ready, when your vibration aligns with your origin, and when it does, something irreversible occurs. You stop pretending. You start remembering, not with your mind, but with your whole being. You don't say your true name, you live it. And in that living, every step becomes sacred, every breath becomes truth, every silence becomes a song. Remembering isn't a moment, it's a practice, because the soul doesn't ask for your attention once, it whispers every day, in the pauses, the routines, the ordinary, and when you begin living from that place, from your remembered self, life doesn't get louder, it gets truer. You start noticing how much you used to perform, how much of your life was scripted, how often you wore a smile you didn't mean, said yes when your soul screamed no. But now you know. You don't need a cave or retreat. You don't need robes or rituals. You need presence. The sacred isn't somewhere else. It's how you eat, how you speak, how you walk. So make each action a ceremony. Drink water like your soul is being nourished. Look someone in the eyes like you're seeing their light. Speak as if your words awaken memories in others. Live like the divine is watching, not to judge you, but to join you. This is the power of the technique. It isn't a weekend experience. It's a compass for every hour. You start asking different questions, not what should I do, but what feels true from my center, not how do I get more, but how do I remember deeper. And in that shift, life begins to respond differently. People sense something in you. A calm, a clarity, a gravity, not because you tried to be spiritual, but because you've stopped pretending to be anything else. This is the quiet revolution. No stage, no followers, just you, living from the source. You thought remembering would only bring light, but then the shadows came, memories you buried, wounds you avoided, parts of you that never healed. They all rise, not to punish you, but to be seen. Because when the soul begins to shine, it doesn't just illuminate the truth, it reveals everything you've tried to hide. This is the part no one talks about, the discomfort, the ache, the quiet heartbreak of facing your forgotten self. You'll meet versions of you still stuck in pain, still begging to be understood, not with judgment, but with presence. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your proof that you've lived, that you've carried wounds and still you remembered. And here's the paradox. You can't fully return to your light until you've walked through your dark. This is why the technique was never for beginners. Because remembering isn't always gentle. It strips you, it undresses you, it breaks the illusion of spiritual perfection. You may feel lost, you may want to go back, but something inside knows. This is the real work, to sit with the ache, to breathe with the fear, to love what feels unlovable, not to fix it, but to reclaim it. Because when you embrace your shadow, it stops controlling you, and only then can your remembrance be whole, not a filtered version, not just the light, but the entire truth of who you are. You've searched for meaning, for healing, for home. You followed paths, teachers, signs, and still something felt just out of reach. Because what you were looking for was never out there. The seeker's path is sacred, but it has an expiration date. At some point, you stop searching and you start remembering. You realize that the answers don't come from outside. They rise up when the noise falls away. You don't need more information. You need more stillness. This is the shift. From chasing light to becoming it, you stop asking, who has the truth? And you start listening to the truth you've carried all along. You stop needing guidance because your breath becomes a teacher, your silence becomes scripture, your life becomes initiation. The world may still spin, but you don't. You begin to anchor, not in belief but in being. And with that, a quiet joy appears, not the excitement of discovery, but the peace of returning. You start to recognize yourself in ancient texts, in strangers' eyes, in the spaces between words. You've shifted from seeker to rememberer, not because you found something, but because you remembered what was never lost. And now, the final step isn't upward or forward, it's inward. Because everything you ever longed for was always waiting in the center of you. You were never lost, just layered, under names, roles, stories, all written for you before you could choose. But beneath all that, beneath the striving, the suffering, the silence, there's a steady pulse, a vibration, not a sound you can hear, but one you are. This is your essence, not a thought, not an identity, a frequency. It doesn't rise with praise or fall with failure. It just is, unmoved, untouched, remembered. And when you align with it, you stop living from effort. You start living from truth. You speak fewer words, but everyone carries weight. You chase less, but attract what you need. You stop fearing endings because you remember you've never really begun. The vibration isn't something you earn, it's something you return to. And once you do, life changes, not in appearance, but in depth. You walk the same streets, but they feel sacred. You see the same faces, but now you see light behind them, because you're no longer trying to wake up. You're living as someone who's remembered, and that is unstoppable. You are not your story. You are not your struggle. You are not even your healing. You are the vibration that remembers. And in remembering, you become the invitation for others to do the same.